This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Good morning and welcome to Loose on the Lead on this Sunday morning. Seth Merrill from Equidaily.com and live via phone from Churchill Downs, Steve Bick from Sirius and XM's At the Races. Good morning, Steve.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Churchill Downs.
And it's been a while, so happy to have you back on board, and I'm happy to be here as, of course, a couple of weeks off with Palm Sunday and Easter Sunday, and the rules in New York, no racing or wagering on Palm Sunday or Easter Sunday. So we're back, although you're out of town. But just before we go along, we'll talk Derby certainly a little bit later and get more into that. But just give us a little update on, you've been at Churchill Downs all week long. What was the weather like? And give us a little feel for opening night last night.
Well, opening night is the first thing to talk about, considering it was a really special atmosphere. You had 25,000 people on hand, and it was really an electric feeling around the place. I think part of it was this crazy, gigantic, big board that I'm sure a lot of you have read about and seen pictures of, and you probably even, during the feed last night, if you were playing, you probably saw the thing.
I was watching the simulcast. I was working on a computer. I had the simulcast signal on all night long, and the big screen was absolutely the feature of the night. There's no question about it.
It is so cool, and to be honest, I came here expecting that it was going to be really, obtrusive and would look bizarre, and in fact, it is remarkable. I mean, the thing is going to be, it was already, last night, the reviews were just smashing. Everybody was amazed, and they are using it in that real stadium, manner with lots of, fun graphics and things to get the crowd going. And it particularly for portions of the grandstand and clubhouse, it has really been put in just for Derby. I mean, to be honest, people that are going to be in places where they've only seen sections of the race previously, you're going to be able to see the whole race with tremendous clarity. The thing is going to be a big hit.
And I found it funny that they waited until it kind of got dark last night, and before that, they had a graphic of a red curtain, and then they unveiled it video-wise. Yeah,
it's a winner, and I got here kind of thinking this is going to be ridiculous, and this is over the top. No, it's a remarkable addition to the landscape. It towers over the that side of the racetrack on the the back side. It is an innovation, and Churchill, who has certainly come under fire the last few weeks for a variety of things. You see what they've done here. There's a new grandstand terrace that they've created, which is at the head of the stretch, off the turn where the horses start. And this has always been kind of a dead area. They turned it into a beautiful kind of garden spot that is going to be, I think, a new destination ticket for people to come see Derby. And apparently it's already instantly got great reviews from last night as a place to mill with all kinds of nice patron amenities. They spent a lot of money here. I mean, another $30 or $40 million has gone into the building again here since a year ago. So they may love racing for the most for 2 days a year, but they certainly go out of their way to make it as spectacular 2 days as they can.
And I linked on Equidaily today, this morning, they had a video on the Courier-Journal website that looked at opening night and the big screen, but they were also interviewing people, how did they like the big screen? And what I took away from that was, as you say, a very nicely sized crowd, no question about it, but also young and old, and people were dressed up. It looked like a great opening night. Let me ask you also about the weather, because I was watching the paddock right prior to the Derby trial, and it looked like shirt sleeve weather down there. Last night in our area, it was raw and cold with some rain overnight, or into the evening anyway. And as I say, I looked at the paddock at Churchill, and it looked like short sleeves and shorts on some people.
Well, we actually have gotten very lucky, and for Derby Oaks preparations and for Derby Oaks week coming up, everybody should be very pleased, because there was this band of storms at the end of the week. We had a little bit of rain into Friday morning. There was concern that the workout session was going to be difficult, and instead we didn't get that much rain. They got more rain at Keeneland before their closing day, and then it cleared beautifully for yesterday and for today. So we had two very important days of workouts, and now there's this next band of terrible weather with hailstorms and all kinds of tornado concerns. You know, that is out in the southwest and in the western half of the Midwest. For those of you that pay attention to this, Oklahoma and that region through Missouri and up into Iowa, they're expecting here over the next 72 hours, and they've already been getting that. So that is going to pass through here tomorrow, Tuesday, Wednesday, and potentially even a little bit into Thursday. So in terms of the cards that are going to be run Tuesday and Wednesday here, and maybe even Thursday, it's not going to be a pleasant few days for people that are here in town for the whole week. However, Friday and Saturday are looming as terrific. So we should have perfect weather for Derby and Oaks, and so the people that root against, they'll just have to deal with a fast track.
All right, and obviously we'll talk a little bit more Derby, and we'll get some of your thoughts on some of the workouts you watched over the past week or so, and touch on all that in a few moments. But before that, I want to get to some news. I do want to remind people that, again, you're down in Churchill, and if folks want to listen to you live, the radio show At the Races, Sirius and XM, it's on live. You can catch it on the internet as well as the archives. And I'm Steve. I'm just looking back to last week. Graham Motion, Caton Bradar, Marty McGee, regular visits from Mike Welch giving workout reports. You had Steve Haskin on. Tony Black with his nice stakes win last week. You had him on. Larry Colmus, Jonathan Shepard, Darren Rogers, Mark Cassie, Ken McPeak. Big lineup. That will continue on the radio show this week, which again is rebroadcast also in the morning here on the network at 6 a.m. But a couple of the names on the list are notable to me as we go back and talk a little bit about news from the past week. The passing of both Safely Kept and Flatterer. A couple of Hall of Famers have passed away. And again, some of those guests you had on last week addressed both of those passings.
Well, we didn't actually get a chance to get to Alan Goldberg and Rich Santulli about Safely Kept, but we did talk to Jonathan Shepard and then to Graham Motion, of course, who Graham on Thursday, Inimitable Romine, the New York bred, wins the Bewitch, and so it gave me a perfect opportunity. And also Graham was busy at Fair Hill working ring weekend to see if he was absolutely going to go ahead and pursue Derby, and the answer, of course, is yes. I think the answer was probably yes all along. But I reached out to Jonathan Shepard because, of course, Flatterer, a remarkable 35 years old, and the Pennsylvania bred was a 4-time steeplechase champion and 4 years in a row. And it's really a tremendous story, and it was a great accomplishment. And, of course, Jonathan Shepard not only, authored that success, Graham Motion was an assistant at the time of Flatterer with Jonathan. And so I got to talk to both of them, and Shepard told a really moving story. For those of you that enjoy Shepard, you love him, and who really appreciate his Hall of Fame prowess. He talked about entering the winner's enclosure with Flatterer when they had gone to Cheltenham, and he finished second at Cheltenham, which was a remarkable accomplishment for an American steeplechase horse in that situation. And Jonathan talked about how they would bring in the top 3 or 4 finishers for photographs, and when they entered the enclosure, a big cheer went up. And so at first, Shepard said he assumed that it was for the winner. Then he realized, no, the winner already is in the enclosure. It was for Flatterer. The British fans were so appreciative of his effort. He came over. It was a 2-mile jump race over the kind of jumps that he wasn't familiar with, and he performed so brilliantly, and there was such respect. And then Graham Motion, when he was on with me on Friday, Graham said he had forgotten that, and he heard Jonathan tell that story, and he had completely forgotten that. And he said he was like 19 at the time, Graham Motion, or maybe even younger. So it was really moving, and Jonathan spoke, so lovingly of the 3+ decades that he had Flatterer, first as a racer and then on his farm. And of course, for Bill Pate, who continues to be a top owner, it was his first, tremendous success in the jump game. Really a special horse, and I remember seeing Flatterer, and really a trooper. And you think about this set, 35 years old, and this is a horse who jumped, I think, until he was 12. And a horse like this, you're talking about arthritis and some of the ailments that would nag at a horse. For him to live until 35 with the wear and tear that he had, it just shows you what kind of a spirit. And frankly, Shepard talked about how he was, ambulatory and moving well up until just really the last 4 or 5 months.
That is incredible. And again, the passing, couple of Hall of Famers, Flatterer and Safely Kept. Steve, also wanted to mention some more news from the past week that was notable. The Saratoga Stakes schedule came out. The Whitney purse bumped up to a very nice $1.5 million. There was perhaps a little consternation that it's now higher than the Travers. Travers was also bumped up, but only to $1.25 million. And this all ties into the announcement also by the Breeders' Cup, now in partnership with NBC Sports, to televise a Win and You're In series of races. And of course, the Whitney will be part of that. But the Saratoga Stakes schedule comes out. Things shook up a little bit.
I actually am a little behind on that, to be honest, and so I can't really comment. I can tell you, though, that I did have Jimmy Gluckson from Breeders' Cup. That is a tremendous piece of news, the NBC tie-in with the expanded schedule and another, what is it, 18, 21 races that they basically will guarantee that there is a race almost every weekend on either Fox Sports 1 or NBC. This is really encouraging, and this all goes back. People say how the industry never accomplishes anything, it never follows through on its discussions. Well, 2 years ago, the McKinsey study, one of the things that was presented at the Jockey Club Roundtable at Saratoga was that there is a need for continuity and for an ongoing presence on mainstream sports television. Well, here it is 2 years later, and you can mark that off as a rousing success, because the Jockey Club and everybody else that has followed suit to make this all happen, Breeders' Cup, all the racetracks that are involved, that have accommodated the schedules for NBC, the NBC Sports Network, and for Fox Sports, kudos to everybody involved, because you may not notice, but we're going to have racing on maybe 30-something, 40 weekends almost a year coming up here real soon. So congratulations to everybody involved.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. This adds a nice number of races to the weekends throughout the year, no question about it. All right, Steve, before we go to the first break, let's go back to last night at Churchill Downs, get some of your thoughts on the Derby trial. Talked about it a little bit earlier on the Handicappers Report. We're going to watch the stretch run here, which does wind up in that disqualification, but boy, it was a ding-dong battle to the wire. Number 1, Bayern will come first under the wire, subsequently be DQ'd, though, and the winner will be Embellishing Bob. Myositis Dan, the number 10 horse, will run third in here. But again, through this stretch, Rosie is hitting left-handed. Bayern floats out and winds up being disqualified to second. But as I say, boy, you couldn't ask more for the opening night feature, as 3 of them right together under the wire.
It was tremendous, and the only negative, of course, is Rosie Napravnik, and what I thought was a pretty dismal performance by her on Bayern. I mean, not only is there this herding of 4 pads that made the disqualification automatic, she's the one who initiated the bumping. She also, for whatever reason, out of the gate, and down the chute, she took Bayern from the fairly advantageous inside slot. She ended up floating him out into the middle of the track and was wide into the turn. I don't know what her thought was, and I don't really think the inside was bad or a bad place to be. So this is all on her, and I'm sure that Bob Baffert and Kaleem Shah were maybe a little disappointed that they didn't get Gary Stevens. Stevens came in to ride Candy Boy early in the morning. Why why didn't they arrange to have Steven stay in town and ride tonight, last night? I don't really get it. Stevens was not riding in California today, as far as I saw, and riding at all this weekend. So all he really had to do was come to work out Candy Boy. I'm sure Baffert very disappointed with this, the way it came out, because you can pin this one right on the Napravnik and nowhere else. In the meantime, embellishing Bob, very happy for Steve Margolis, and fairly, a couple of years now, I guess 18 months, he's had Marty Cherry as a client, and this is a nice win for them. And Myositis Dan, the great one, Tom Proctor and Brary Jones, with this horse that is named for the joint inflammation ailment. It's an awareness horse. And Proctor told us all about this horse back in November, and he continues to improve and is going to be a nice middle distance type. It was a thriller. Everybody was hooting and hollering.
Yeah, it was a great way to open up the meet and begin Derby week. All right, Steve, we'll go to our first break, and when we come back, got to look at one race that's outside of the 3-year-old division from last week that I just wanted to touch on because we didn't get to look at it. We'll look at the Charlestown Classic to kick things off when we come back, but then we'll move right into some Derby and Oaks talk as well. All of that right after this break.
Hey race fans, head down to the all-new Clubhouse Racebook. With live horse racing on more than 250 flat-screen TVs, state-of-the-art wagering terminals, and amazing Vegas-style atmosphere. The Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue, Albany.
Go Zephyr kicking clear, and Go Zephyr is pulling away impressively.
Hysterical Lady, Ginger Punch to win it.
And it's Wilco in front, and he's going to pull off a huge upset here.
But it's Round Pond going on to take the distaff.
Awesome again. Sire of 10 Grade 1 winners, 4 Breeders' Cup champions, and 4 multimillionaires, standing at Adena Springs.
It's more than just a sports bar. It's Stadium Cafe. Located at 389 Broadway in Saratoga, it's the place to be for great times and great food. Their menu features everything from gourmet entrees to your favorite wraps and sandwiches. Or maybe you just want to grab a beer and catch the game. So what can be better than that? How about 2 Stadium Cafes? There's also the Westside Stadium, right up the road at 112 Congress Street. Same great menu, same great service. Whether you're hanging at the bar or just relaxing outside on their spacious covered patio, you'll always leave knowing you'll be back again.
We love, above all, the staff. We love Dave Harmon, and the food is fantastic.
Not 1, but 2. 112 Congress Street, 389 Broadway. Guaranteed to be a home run.
Missed one of our TV shows? No worries. Now you can catch all your favorite programs online. Simply log on to CapitalOTV.com and click on the YouTube link at the bottom of the homepage. And look for our new podcast coming soon. CapitalOTV.com. Log on today.
Welcome back to Loose on the Lead. Seth Merrow in the studio, Steve Bick live from Churchill Downs via phone. And Steve, before we start talking Derby and Oaks, just want to go back to a race last week. And again, we weren't on the past couple of Sundays because of the holidays. So I wanted to touch on a race, obviously, with this handicap division being so intriguing this year. Did want to get your thoughts going back to the Charlestown Classic last Saturday. We'll watch the stretch run. And Game On Dude, number 3, will wind up being upset, running second in here at 3-5. Marino will run third, and Marino and Game On Dude were dueling early in this race. That obviously took some kind of toll. And Imperative, under Kent DeSormo, gets up to win at 26-1. What were your thoughts on the Charlestown Classic?
Well, the thoughts are that we know from last year, we got to remember from last year that Game On Dude, anybody that remembers, while he won, it was made very clear that he didn't necessarily love that surface. You know, that is not a racetrack that you just ship into necessarily, and, you know, some horses are not going to take to it. And, you know, then there's the matter of it being, you know, the bit of the bull ring action, and so it isn't necessarily an ideal place for him. His raw talent carried him last year, and it's not like he ran badly in here. The story just happens to be that Imperative, who has now finished ahead of him twice this year. Imperative is a wonderful story. I mean, George Papapadromo is a terrific story in himself. He's a Cypriot that came to the U.S. with his dad. His dad was a horseman that was looking to buy some horses to bring back to Cyprus, and then George wanted to stay, and he was a rider, and then he wanted to stay and train, and so he got his dad to come back actually to the U.S., and they worked together for a while. His father trained, and then at a certain point, he turned it over. And Papapadromo has, 100 starters a year? I mean, he almost doubled his lifetime earnings as a trainer in one night. It's really terrific. And I get some insight into these guys from Rick Hammerly and, all the conversations we get to have every week in the racing office at Santa Anita. And people, in the same way that they're just delighted for Art Sherman, people were just, beside themselves that Papapadromo would go and win $1.5 million race. And of course, for Ket DeSormo, it's great too. DeSormo very quietly, is riding very effectively. And so I thought it was a great outcome. Game on Dude's going to keep winning his share of races, but it's nice that people like this and connections like this, win that kind of money. It's good for the game. It's good for everybody.
All right, let's move on and talk some 3-year-olds now. Derby Week, Oak Week is underway. You've been at Churchill for the past week, and as I noted, you've been out, I'm sure, watching the workouts. That's the way it sounds when you're on the radio, but you've also had Mike Welch as a regular visitor on the radio. So give us some thoughts this past week, what you've seen in the mornings.
Well, I probably best served to work backwards from what has gone on here really the last 48 hours. And notably, and kind of curiously, to be honest, we have not had, these last couple of days, we have not had the kind of glittering Derby works that you look to so often, and then, that historically we talked about, the street sense work, the hard spun work, the 57 and 4, a Fleet Alex who had a brilliant work, and of course the mother of all Derby works, Barbaro, and to an extent Animal Kingdom from a couple of years ago. So we haven't had the one that produces the oohs and ahs. However, there's been some, very effective and smooth efforts that more or less earmark horses that are going well. And, that's what you're looking for here. You're looking for horses that are touting themselves with the way in which they get around, whether it's even galloping. You want horses that are galloping with energy and that look like they have a controlled power, horses that are under a hold but are going, very confidently. And you can see that, and you can separate that from the horses that are being nursed around, that are being held together, that are being urged if it's a workout. So right now, what we've seen really these last 8 days has been pretty nuanced. And to give you the example, I mean, just today, for instance, the 2 premier works of the morning came from the Pletcher workers. That came from Danza and from Intense Holiday. And I suppose if we do it in the work of the day sense, Intense Holiday absolutely had the work of the day. And he's doing very, very well here. And one of the things that happens, horses relocate from, let's say, Palm Meadows or Gulfstream, and it's a different surface, and so they may, pop up and suddenly look better than they've been looking, or in some cases, for instance, in the case today of Wildcat Red, they aren't going to look as good. And Wildcat Red is transitioning from Gulfstream, which of course is very tight and very hard and very fast, to this track, which is a little bit duller. Certainly the last couple of mornings, it's been a little heavier and kind of a dullish surface, so it's harder to get over. So, for instance, Wildcat Red today, he was not good. I mean, he went fast early and then really tired noticeably late. So these are the kinds of little things that you're watching for. Getting back to Pletcher, Intense Holiday worked with Wee Miss Artie. He left Wee Miss Artie at the wire. I mean, they broke off fairly evenly, maybe with Intense Holiday a length back. Intense Holiday was being held so that Wee Miss Artie could even stay with him, And then finally, Johnny Velasquez had to just let Intense Holiday go, and Intense Holiday finished with a real nice flourish, and suddenly was 5-6 lengths out in front of We Miss Artie. We Miss Artie is hopeless here and belongs in the turf race, but because it's Ramsey, he's going to run him. He would be so much better off in the American turf, but so be it. Danza and Vince Remos was the other pair, and Vince Remos, listen, he's a nice horse. I don't think he's a Derby threat by any means. He had to work hard to stay with Danza. The Arkansas Derby winner is doing very well here. People that are looking to parlay his success at Oaklawn, horses that run well at Oaklawn run well here. The surfaces are fairly similar in terms of composition. So Danza continues to be a horse, I think, at the top of everybody's watch list. Vince Remos couldn't really stay with him through the lane, but then to his credit, he did dig in and try to get back equal footing with Danza on the gallop out. But Danza and Intense Holiday had really strong works today. Then later in the morning, we got to, I mentioned Wildcat Red, Ride On Curlin, who's a horse I really like as an underneath proposition, a horse that just always runs his race and cashes checks. He could be third and fourth in the Derby for old school Billy Gowan, a guy that came up under Jack Van Bern. Ride On Curlin has been galloping very effectively every morning, dragging the rider out of the saddle. Today was a little unusual. It was a 7-furlong work, and it's not going to get any kind of a time that people are going to say, oh, he went slow, but you have to watch the beginning and the middle and the end. He went slowly early, broke off in about a 14-second opener, and then had good internal fractions. He had about a 24 and change run down the stretch, and then into the turn, finishing up his last 3/8 in about 37. So while it doesn't look like anything when you look at the time, this is why workouts can be deceptive. I think Billy Gowan got what he wanted. I think he just wanted to get some, kind of a long opener, as they say. But Ride On Curlin, some people are going to say, oh, he didn't work well. That's not true. That's somebody that is just giving it strictly a top level evaluation based on the time. Otherwise, Ride On Curlin was fine. He too is a horse that's getting a lot of attention because his owner, this is all an owner. Susan Chu, she wants to run in the Derby. She doesn't care that he is probably not suited for the assignment. Baffert was originally going to run him in the Derby trial. He'll be a very good horse later on at middle distances. He's got a problem with a hoof that continues to grow out. If you missed Jay Privman's story in DRF, he tells the entire story about the fungal infection that he had even in advance of the Sunland Derby. In fact, he came to Baffert with the fungal infection. They got it out, but it still has to basically grow out of his hoof. So he works with a protective, basically a bar shoe, what they call a spider shoe, which has a very big coverage underneath the shoe. He actually pulled his shoe off in the work today. He went 6 furlongs, and he looked good today, because I got to be honest, yesterday galloping, he kind of was choppy and he didn't look like he was going all that well at all yesterday, just galloping. But today he did a gait work of 6 furlongs, and he worked with a work-made Party Time, and he looked good today, actually, with the full effect of having a gait blast. One horse that continues to impress that isn't in the Derby, she would maybe be the second choice behind California Chrome. Untappable is just, she's just scary, Seth. She comes out here every morning and is crawling out of her skin. Today she was really getting annoyed at the rider on the backstretch before she broke off for her work. She was just throwing her head and just begging to go, and the rider would not let her go until the work started. She is very good. I don't know how anybody's going to beat her in the Oaks, and frankly, I think she would have been super competitive even in the Derby. We get into some of the works from earlier this week. Mike Maker sent out General A-Rod the other day, and he had a curious work. He was either watching the board, the new big board, or he was clearly unfocused. Something was not right. And then every morning since then, Maker has tried to do something else with him. Yesterday, he was out here in blinkers, and he actually jogged very well. And may have shown some positive progress after the work, which was a curiosity. Maker's other two horses, Vickers in Trouble, I did not like the way he went yesterday much at all. Harry's Holiday, he's just a horse. And the local connections, I think, just want to run, so good luck to them. Commanding Curve was a disappointment. Commanding Curve yesterday, he has galloped really nicely on every morning, really. And then he worked yesterday and was just not impressive at all, kind of labored through the lane. He's still on the outside looking in, the same way last year Dallas Stewart sat with Golden Soul. Eventually he grew in and got into the field and then finished a closing second in that collapsing Derby of a year ago. But Commanding Curve certainly did not really set himself up seemingly too well if he does get in. The two good works from yesterday were Metal Count and Candy Boy. And when I say good works, they were the best of the day, but they weren't special by any means. I got to say that. They were both they were both good. They were smooth and efficient. After that, go back further in the week set, Opportunity. Opportunity looks terrific out here. His work was outstanding, and he probably, of the Derby horses, he has probably worked the best of the ones that we've seen. Without question, he's worked the best. And he seems to be coming into this very well. He's a horse that I like because he runs even quarters, 24-2, 24-3, 24-2. That's a style that is very effective in the Kentucky Derby, and Opportunity's touting himself very nicely as we get closer. Rosalind has worked nicely moving forward here. Kenny McPeak's filly for the Oaks. Of the Pletcher fillies for the Oaks, too, let me note that my Miss Sophia, basically being acknowledged as the horse most likely to give any kind of a tussle to Untappable. She's looked good. She and Rosalind are the two that have looked good. Rhea Antonia gallops nicely over this racetrack. So there's your top line. The New York crowd got here yesterday. Wicked Strong arrived this morning, actually at 5:30, but Uncle Si, Samrat, the rest of them were waiting for, of course, for California Chrome will be the focus of everybody's attention. We're basically, on the cusp of that intense period that builds up to Derby Oaks weekend.
All right, we only got a few minutes left, but let's blow through just some stretch runs here and go beyond the works and get some opinions for you, because I know you posted as part of a group some early selections for the Derby, and some of these horses are in your mix. So let's go back and take a look at the Arkansas Derby. That was another race that we haven't been able to talk about here on the show because we were on break, so we're going back a couple of weeks to the 12th of April. We're going to watch Danza get it done in the Arkansas Derby. Running second will be Ride On Curlin, and those are a couple of horses that are in your top four.
Well, Danza seemingly comes out of nowhere, but in fact, clearly Todd Pletcher had been playing possum with this horse, and he is a contender in a big way, and is going to come in here hot. And I think you've got to really respect him. He's got the right kind of style. He can sit behind the speed, but he's got a nice cruising gear of his own, and he's a horse that has shown repeatedly, even in just the 4 starts, he's shown that he can basically stalk and then finish. And so Danza is very serious. And, you look, if you're watching that stretch run, look at where Ride On Curlin is. Look at how much ground he lost having to swing wide and basically go around everybody. I mean, if you turn those two trips around, Danza with the ground saber under Joe Bravo and Ride On Curlin, if he had been inside, that would have been a much different stretch run. So Danza and Ride On Curlin absolutely have to be, I think they're different strata, Seth. I think Danza is what they call, if you're going to use Steve Christ's conversation, and good to have Steve Christ home from the health scare, Danza is an A. Ride On Curlin is kind of a C, a horse that's going to be very good for your exotics. Seems like a long shot as a win candidate, but it is a horse that you could really see, being in the mix underneath to boost your exotic. But Danza is absolutely a win candidate of no small note.
And a minute or so left, but let's take a look at the Wood Memorial, because your top pick, a week out, but your top pick, Wicked Strong, obviously the winner of the Wood Memorial, the number 2 horse, will get it done, finishing second in the Wood Memorial, number 8, Samrot. But again, we're a week out. Wicked Strong is the horse you have on top.
Wicked Strong, it seems to me to be the right horse in this mix, off of that Wood performance, and the fact that he'll come here, I think, with the right style and with all the things that you're looking for as an alternative to California Chrome. I mean, let's not pretend that California Chrome isn't the horse to beat, and the horse that if you ran this race 100 times would come out as the winner most often. That doesn't mean that at 2-1, 5-2, maybe 3-1, you're going to bet him enthusiastically. You're looking for alternatives. You can protect California Chrome in so many different ways. There's so many options and things to do in multi-race wagers, the 2-day wagers, the Oaks Derby double, the Oaks Woodford Derby pick 3. There's lots of things you can do with California Chrome. You want Wicked Strong, Danza, and Opportunity. Those are the 3 horses, and then I would say as a fourth, Intense Holiday right now. Those are your 4 win alternatives, and that's where my group of horses and how I'll work my best. Wicked Strong, Danza, Opportunity, Intense Holiday, and Ride on Curlin. That's the group of 5 that I want to make into my exacta and triples and the core of my play. That's pretty much. I don't see myself moving off this unless anything happens. That's where I'll be with those 5.
Sounds good. And of course, folks, again, can keep up with you down at Churchill Downs all week long on the radio side, Sirius and XM, or check out the website for live feed or the archives. And again, you have great guests each and every day for 3 hours live trackside at Churchill Downs. Steve, absolutely appreciate the visit this morning. Have fun this week, and we'll check in for a recap next Sunday morning.
Absolutely. I'll be probably by that point in northern Ohio, or maybe even as close as Erie. And I wish everybody the best of luck, Oaks and Derby. It's always the start that kicks things into another gear in American racing, and everything seems in place for a great week. And hopefully everybody comes out. Hope you score out.
Sounds good. All right, Steve. Thanks again.
Not at all.
Steve Bick, Sirius and XM's At the Races. Again, you can check that out live on the internet on Sirius XM, or it's replayed here on the network every morning at 6 a.m. We'll take our next break. When we come back, John White of Santa Anita, morning line odds maker out there, but also an online columnist paying a lot of attention to the Derby and the run-up. Obviously, we'll get some of his thoughts right after this.
May 3rd, it's the 140th running of the Kentucky Derby, and you can watch it at CapitalOTBBet.com. With live streaming and 3 easy-to-navigate wagering platforms, CapitalOTBBet.com is the most convenient way to wager on the Derby.
I didn't want to get just any degree after high school.
Horse racing has always been my passion.
I was already a lawyer.
When I was young, my dad took me to the races. The sound of the crowd. I still remember.
I'm 40. And I don't want to stay in a career I don't love.
I want to follow my passion.
Follow your passion at the University of Arizona Racetrack Industry Program.
Fascinated by the world of horse racing? Interested in honing your handicapping skills? Class is in session. Night school, Monday nights. Easy to access online. It's free, interactive, and informative for the casual and serious race fan. Horse Player Now Buzz. Live horses to watch emailed to you daily. Our eyes, your prize. Night School in the Buzz. Visit horseplayernow.com for details.
The Capital OTB Handicapping Challenge Series is back. That's right. The 2014 Capital OTB Handicapping Challenge Series is back, and it's your chance to win thousands in cash and prizes, and a seat at the 2015 Handicapping Championship in Las Vegas. This month's contest is the Triple Threat on May 10th. So sign up today, online at capitalotv.com or stop in at the Clubhouse Racebook.
I'm Jeff Carl. Join me Saturdays and Sundays at 9 for the Handicappers Report. We'll handicap the top tracks across the country and help you prepare for the weekend in racing. That's the Handicappers Report, weekends at 9, only here on the OTB TV network.
Welcome back to Racing Across, Loose on the Lead. Racing Across America is Monday through Friday, but it's Sunday and it's Loose on the Lead. Happy to be joined now by John White, morning line odds maker out at Santa Anita, also online columnist, putting out a lot of information and thoughts on the Kentucky Derby over the last few weeks, and that's why we invited John this morning. Good morning, John.
Good morning. How are you?
Very good. And I do want to alert folks, as we went into the commercial break, my co-host Steve Bick was via phone, and he alerted me that breaking news has come out. Ring Weekend is now out with a fever, which shakes things up a little bit, because then I subsequently told that to John White, and John White made the great point that Bayern, running second last night, had moved to number 21 on the list over Commanding Curve. So now that is going to add a little intrigue.
Well, Bob Baffert has said that, at least before the Derby trial, that he had no intention of, once he ran Byron in the Derby trial, that he would wheel him back in 1 week. But as we all know, things can change. But at this point, I would not be anticipating Byron in the Kentucky Derby. But they wanted their chance to have him run, and at least now, if they wanted, they could run Byron, and so that's rather interesting. You know, it's one of those things in racing. You really have to fly by the seat of your pants, because if they had not run in the Derby trial and gambled that they could get into the Kentucky Derby, the gamble would have paid off. So that's kind of interesting too. And the other thing is, Byron didn't even win the Derby trial. He did finish first, but he was disqualified.
Yeah, under normal circumstances, I would say, he's not going to come back in a week. But that siren call of the Kentucky Derby, I'm going to wait to hear what they say over the next 24 hours or so. All right, John, let's get into it a little bit. Again, you've had some nice columns over the past few weeks. We'll touch on your strike list in a few moments, but your most recent column was your early morning line. And again, you're the morning line odds maker out at Santa Anita, so you have experience doing this, and you put together for the online column this week your early line for the Kentucky Derby. And John, I talked on TV all last week about this. You have California Chrome on top at 5-2, and then you got a couple of 8-1s, and you get down. You got a bunch in here at 15-1, and I think that just signifies it is kind of murky after California Chrome. And John, while we talk, we're going to go back and look at California Chrome's workout. I believe it was yesterday.
Yes, he worked yesterday at Los Alamitos, 48 1/5.
And we've got the video of that workout that we're going to watch while we talk. But just give us your thoughts. As I say, it seems like the pundits and the Derby lists and whatnot are really putting California Chrome clearly on top.
Well, I think he's clearly on top in terms of how the wagering will shake out. The reason for that is each race has its own wagering dynamic. That's something I have to take into account for the Breeders' Cup, for instance. And one of the dynamics is, do you have a situation where you have a clear-cut favorite and then it's murky after that, or do you have a clear-cut favorite and then there's a clear-cut second favorite and then maybe sometimes even a clear-cut third favorite? Or do you have a situation where there's three horses that any one of the three could go favored, and then you have a gap to the rest? So again, every race is different. The way I see this dynamic in terms of this year's Kentucky Derby, you have, I think, the bettors. You're going to have the people believing in California Chrome, and understandably so, following 4 consecutive, very impressive performances. And then you're going to have the people like myself that are going to go elsewhere, try to beat him, but that's going to be spread all over the map. So, I mean, it's a real interesting question. Who will be the second favorite? It might be Wicked Strong. It might be Opportunity. That's why I made them close second favorites at 8-1. It could even be Danza. It could be somebody else. So that is really up in the air to me. Now you mentioned that Ring Weekend is out with a fever. Hypothetically, and I certainly hope this doesn't happen, but what if California Chrome were to come up with a fever or some issue that would preclude him from entering the race? We've seen this happen in the Kentucky Derby. who would be the favorite then for this race? I mean, that would be just totally up in the air. So at this point, California Chrome to me is the clear favorite, and then who knows?
And that was my thought last week after reading, as I say, the pundits and the Derby 10 lists, the Derby dozens or whatnot. California Chrome has something of a consensus, but then you get past that horse and it really starts to become murky. And again, I found it interesting as I looked at your morning line last week, and I found it interesting when we got down to the bunch that were grouped at 15-1, and I thought, Dance with Fate, I don't know, I think that one might float up a little bit. I'm not quite sure about that one. Subsequently, I pulled up your early online selections, and you're in the same group of folks that put out some information along with my partner from earlier, Steve Bick. And your top pick, John, Dance with Fate, and while we talk, we're going to pull up the stretch run of the Bluegrass at Keeneland, where number 8, Dance with Fate, will get it done. Number 13, Medal Count, will run second in that race. But, John, I have to ask you have Dance with Fate on top, which again, as I say, I kind of questioned your morning line, but now I see you like this horse a little bit, so that's very interesting. And I have to ask you, as we watch the Bluegrass, you're kind of overlooking or discounting or don't believe the fact that this horse may just be better on synthetics and turf?
Well, I actually laugh at that quite a bit.
Okay.
In other words, you could have drawn the same conclusion about California Chrome after the first race he ran on dirt. He finished off the board in his first race on dirt, and he'd been running on synthetic, and people could have said, well, California Chrome, he's just a synthetic horse. That's obvious, because look at how he ran the first time he ever ran on dirt. And now look what California Chrome has done on dirt. The first time he ever ran on dirt was in the Golden State Juvenile at Santa Anita last November. He finished 6th in that race. He wasn't even the favorite. He finished 6th in a field of 9. I wouldn't call that an auspicious first try on dirt. Yet, is he a dirt horse, Seth? Would you call California Chrome a dirt horse?
Absolutely.
And let me ask you this, Seth. Who do you feel is widely acknowledged to be the horse to beat in the Kentucky Derby?
California Chrome.
There's only one horse that will be in the Kentucky Derby that's already beaten California Chrome, and that's the horse I like. And he didn't just beat California Chrome. If you go back and watch the video of the Del Mar Futurity, which was a roughly run race, California Chrome did not have the best of trips that day, and he finished 6th in the Del Mar Futurity. Dance with Fate had a much worse trip. He was dead last going into the far turn, and the rider, in fact, California Chrome and Dance with Fate were right next to each other as they were approaching the far turn. And then California Chrome was last going into the far turn, and turning for home, the riders on California Chrome, which on that occasion was Delgado, and the rider on Dance with Fate, which was Bejarano, they had to make decisions. The field was well bunched, and they had to decide, do I try to stay toward the inside and hope to get lucky, or do I go outside? Delgado decided to try to stay toward the inside. Bejarano decided to go to the outside, which I think was actually the better decision at the time. But what happened is, because the field was so well bunched, Dance with Fate almost ended up in the Pacific Ocean. Despite almost ending up in the Pacific Ocean, once he got into the stretch, he didn't run by California Chrome. He blew by California Chrome. And Dance with Fate almost won that race. He only lost by a half a length. And one step past the finish, he was in front. And about 3 jumps past the finish, he was 3 in front. Now, as far as this dirt issue, only yesterday I can give you an example of Dance with Fate. He worked for everybody. Most of the entire world was focused on California Chrome's workout at Los Alamitos, which you just showed. Dance with Fate worked on the dirt at Santa Anita yesterday morning, and for a horse that I keep being told is, well, he's more of a synthetic, he's more of a turf horse, he worked 4 furlongs and 47 flat, second best of 62 workouts at the distance. Now, I wouldn't exactly say that's a horse who is not capable of running well on dirt. And if you go back and look at Dance with Fate's Breeders' Cup Juvenile, that race was a lot better on dirt than people realize. He got wiped out leaving the starting gate. He broke from post 2, the horse in post 3 took a left-hand turn and cut him off. He was next to last going into the clubhouse turn, and he started a rally at the three-quarter pole, which is approaching the backstretch. He sustained that rally all the way from the three-quarter pole to the quarter pole. That's a half-mile move in the Grade 1 Breeders' Cup Juvenile. And understandably, after making such a move that started so soon in the race, Dance with Fate ran out of steam in the stretch. But the fact that he was able to make that kind of a move on dirt in the Grade 1 Breeders' Cup Juvenile is a strong indication to me that this horse can run quite well on dirt. And this horse has only one strike on my strike system. He's got the same Derby strikes profile as Silver Charm and Super Saver, so he's in good shape in my Derby strike system. This Bluegrass was a very good race that I think will set him up for the Kentucky. The distance I don't think will be a problem, and he's got Corey Nakatani, who is riding very, very well right now, and ironically was on the horse at the start of the year that a lot of people thought was going to win the Kentucky Derby, and that's Shared Belief, who then was sidelined with the foot problem.
I like it. So Dance with Fate on top, California Chrome second, Wicked Strong third, and Metal Count fourth. About a week out were your selections. And as you noted, Dance with Fate has one strike on your strike list. And for folks who aren't familiar, you have 9 categories. And if horses get more than a couple of strikes, historically, it becomes very difficult for them to win the Derby. California Chrome, 0 strikes, so certainly he has that going for him. Via the strike list and horses you like or dislike, what jumped out at you this year?
Well, the fact that we don't have many of the that have more than 2. There's only a smattering of that, and Byron, incidentally, would have been one of those in social inclusion. They both would have had 5 going into the Derby, although now I have to recalculate Byron because he's had another race. And one of the keys in my system is you're focusing on a horse's last 2 races. So that has changed with Byron. But the way my system spells it out, and it's based on a historical and tactical perspective for the Kentucky Derby, and it's worked pretty well. If you have 0 strikes or 1 strike, you're in very, very good shape, because the vast majority of horses through the years have had 0 or 1. And in fact, 47 of the last, but if you have 2, it's not impossible for you to win the Derby, but it is unlikely. You're into the unlikely category because there's only been a very small number of those in my system. If you have more than 2, there's only been 1 horse since I've been, if you go back to 1973, 1 horse since 1973 had more than 2 strikes, and that was Mine That Bird. And I think we can all agree, that his Kentucky Derby was not exactly one that you would look at and say, wow, well, that makes a lot of sense.
And they made a movie out of him. So
yeah,
you get 4 strikes, you get a movie.
They deserved to make a movie out of him because that race was pretty off the wall, to be honest with you. I mean, even though he was a 2-year-old champion in Canada, and he ran a good race in the Preakness, went second to Rachel Alexandra. But other than that, I mean, you still kind of look back at his Derby, and as I say, you kind of have to put it, to me at least, I look at it as something in the flukish category.
Yeah, I don't think you get much disagreement on that. John, we got to wrap things up. As always, we appreciate the visit, and certainly we'll be checking in with your column again this week to see if there's any change up as we get a little bit closer to the Derby, and by then post positions will be drawn and whatnot, but we certainly...
And of course, that is more important for the Kentucky Derby than any other race run in the United States every year.
Yeah, no question about it. Oh, and just we got just about 30 seconds left, John, but just the beginning of a new era out there at Santa Anita. First couple of days in the books. How's the new spring meet going?
Going very well. We had a good crowd on hand yesterday for Gold Rush Day. Of course, that was a day previously held at Hollywood Park that puts the spotlight on California bred and California sired horses. And we had 5 stakes races yesterday for the Calbreds. And, of course, Calbreds have really been in the spotlight, too, because of a Calbred by the name of California Chrome.
There you go, absolutely. All right, John, we appreciate the visit. Good luck in the Derby, and we'll check in again later.
Thanks, Seth, and thanks for all the great work you do with Equidaily. I still say it's the premier website for horse racing.
Thank you, I appreciate that. John White from Santa Anita. A little bit earlier, Steve Bick, my partner, live via phone from Churchill Downs. All of that brings us to the end of this edition of Loose on the Lead. We're here every Sunday morning from 10 until 11 a.m. Don't forget, if you have questions, comments, or suggestions, looseonthelead@yahoo.com is our email address. We would love to hear from you. Again, that's going to wrap things up. A little bit earlier was the Handicappers Report. Jeff Carl and myself. Hopefully we gave you some good ideas. So enjoy the races this afternoon. Let's all cash a few tickets. We'll be back in here tomorrow morning with more Loose on the Lead, or excuse me, with more Handicappers Report and Racing Across America. So we'll see you then.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off-Track Betting.